Okay, I'm working on a 2000 BMW 750iL, and the problem I'm having is when the engine is running, that battery light does not go away. So I've got, it is not charging the batteries. I checked voltage at the batteries, verify that it is not charging. I also checked the alternator output right there, and it actually was below 12 volts. So I have a bad alternator. So I am going to replace that. And I've done it before on this car about 8 years ago. It's not too bad. The hardest part is getting the alternator out without taking the radiator out. Can be done. You just got to be a little patient in working it out. One of the things that you need to know if you're going to start this project is these alternators are tied into the coolant system. They are water cooled alternator. And how they do that is on the new alternator, you'll see you've got a O-ring right there. So this whole alternator fits into a casing that is part of the coolant system. So first thing we need to do is get all the coolant out of this system before we start. So I've got the car jacked up, draining the coolant right now. Caught most of it, I think. The way that I drained it, and this might be a little difficult to see, but is that bottom radiator hose. It's like most BMW hose connections. It's a wire ring that you just slide up and it notches in halfway and stays in place. I'm going to let that drain out before I remove the overflow reservoir and the fan shroud. To remove the shroud, what I did was I pulled the hose off the overflow reservoir here. I also undid this hose right here. Be careful with this plastic piece. About a month ago I had to replace this hose because I broke this piece, and it's quite the job. Both intake manifolds have to come off. This hose snakes down to a Y and shoots back to about this location right here. So be careful. You do not want to break this piece. Disconnected that. When I pulled that bottom hose, the rest of the coolant system drained. I was able to catch most of it. I'm pretty happy with that. And the next thing then is two plugs that once they're out will look like this. And they are located right there and right there. To get those out, I used a trim removal tool to slide back behind the head there and pop that out. So now I should be able to lift the fan shroud straight up and clear the fan. I think I remember that I could do this without pulling the fan first, so I'm going to give that a try. So the shroud is loose, and it will clear that fan. As I'm bringing it up, right down there is going to be two electrical connectors. One of them goes to the overflow reservoir, and you will need to unplug that one. It is a connector that looks like this. My tab is kind of broken off there, but you press a tab and slide that off. The other connector is hooked to a block that is got a place for it to clip to. Instead of unplugging it and risk breaking that connector, I just popped it off of the fan shroud where it sits. Um, yeah, go ahead and pull this out. One last connection on this shroud is over here on the top of the radiator, and it just feeds the overflow reservoir and goes over to that plastic fitting. I'm just going to pull it here and keep it all together. Now that the shroud is out, I want to get a little more room to get to that alternator right there. When I was troubleshooting it, I already pulled the air filter box out, which would sit right in here. That's pretty easy. There's just two hoses that hook up to one side of the box. One's a hose clamp right there, and the other one is just a press-on fitting that kind of locks in place. Hose clamp right here on the mass airflow sensor, and the air box is really only held in place by this screw or bolt right here. There's nothing on the inside that really connects it, so just this one right here, and it is bolted right to there. So just pull that out, undo this hose clamp, that hose clamp. Yeah, and it comes out pretty easy. Opens up a whole bunch of room right there for me to get to that alternator. I also need to, or want to, remove this fan. And it's kind of a pain, and the problem is just the depth. In my opinion, the problem is just the depth of the nut that they have on the clutch fan. I have the kit to do all the clutch fan removals in various sizes. That kit is worthless with this car. I also purchased this 32 millimeter oversized wrench, but the problem with it is it's really too wide to get onto that nut and fit between the actual clutch and the bolts that hold the pulley on. So, like I said, I had to replace this hose right here all the way back to there, and I had to take this off a couple weeks ago. What was easiest for me was just taking these three Allen wrench bolts out. There's three of them. Just undo them, and the fan will come off of the clutch assembly. And that was the only way that I could really get it off. One thing I am going to do this time that I didn't do before is more clearly mark the fan. I don't want to put this on backwards. It'd be a pain in the butt to have to go back and redo that. So, airbox out, fans coming off, and I think that'll give us enough room to easily get to the alternator. So we've got two connectors here on the alternator. This is just a squeeze together clamp, comes off. The other one's the main power cable, and it's still hot to the battery right now. So if you trace that up to right here, you can just pull that cable right there. I mean, you can disconnect the battery too. There's two batteries back there. I don't know. This just seems a little bit easier way to do that. So I'm going to disconnect that, and then remove it from the alternator, and then I'll see about getting that belt removed. Okay, to remove the serpentine belt off of the radiator, you've got a hydraulic little strut here that's keeping tension on that idler arm. And it will cam over if you get a wrench on it and start turning it clockwise. It's going to lock into place. Right like that. Now there's all the tension's removed off the belt. Should be able to slide it off pretty easily now. Now that the belt is off, cam your hydraulic cylinder here on the idler arm back over so that you can gain access to all of the 6 10mm bolts that hold the radiator or hold the alternator into its casing. So cam that back, get a 10mm long socket, probably an extension, and go around and loosen all of those up. Probably gonna get a little bit of coolant. I'm gonna set a splash mat down to try and not make a mess. Okay, as I thought, got some coolant that came out, but the alternator is loose. Now the trick is going to be to get it out a little bit and flip it around to where the back side of the alternator is up against the radiator here. I remember that it wouldn't come out with the pulley facing forward, so just finagle it, flip it around, and out it'll come. Okay, so it is out of the vehicle. I did have to remove a couple other things. I did end up disconnecting the upper radiator hose from both the radiator and the block side, and just kind of got it wrapped up and tucked back there. I also did take off the mass airflow sensor just to give me a little bit more room to get my arms in. And I did have to take the clutch fan off. Like I said, I don't have a thin enough 32-inch or 32mm wrench to get it off, but I was able to get it off with a set of narrow channel locks and a long flat tip screwdriver. Just use the screwdriver on the bolts here to lock it off, and then the channel locks on the clutch fan nut. Just a reminder, to get it off you have to turn it clockwise. But got that off, and a little finagling. I don't think I dinged up my radiator at all. The path that it came out was kind of over here, so I came out, spun it around, got it up a little bit. I also took the cover off the coil pack here, just to give me a little bit of room. I didn't want to break that plastic. So get it out, spin it around, flat side up against the radiator, and then kind of came up, over, and out. A little tight. I don't know. I think it's a bit easier than pulling the radiator out. But that's just me. Anyways, the alternator is out, and I'm ready for the new one. Everything else is just in reverse, getting it back together. One thing I will point out is the new alternator had some factory decals on it. You can kind of see a little bit there. I did use some adhesive remover and a softer wire brush and got this surface really clean. And the reason I wanted to do that is this part of the alternator is taking a bath basically in this thing right here, and obviously it's submerged completely in coolant. Well, I didn't want these decals deteriorating from the coolant breaking down and then getting trapped in the radiator or the heater core anywhere. So if they do put silly little warning decals on this. My recommendation would be to remove those and make sure this surface is really clean. I also inspected the seal here. It's got a rubber O-ring, goes all the way around. I am also going to make sure that where that O-ring seats, that surface is nice and clean too. I don't want a coolant leak from this. So yeah, that's the alternator out. Get it back in. The same sequence reversed. Good luck.